Hey, what's up guys? Dwayne here again from Code Endure, and today we have another awesome HTML and CSS tutorial. Let's take a look at what we'll be creating. This is what we'll be creating. It's the home page for a gym, and as you can see here, this is our header section which has the gym logo, a headline, and a call to action button with a nice hover effect. We also have this video playing in the background, and if you look closely, you'll see a color overlay that is changing. This was achieved using CSS keyframes. And finally, for the header section, we have this navigation where when we clicked it, the navigation menu slides out from the left, and we have this cool animation for the icon. The next section of our home page will be the Path to Greatness section, where you can see we have 4 cards. When we hover over each card, the image contrast increases and the body of the card is seen. The body contains a paragraph and a button. Our next section here has an image to the left and some text with a button on the right. So we have this header text, a paragraph, and we have this button with this cool hover effect as well. And our last section will be our footer section, which has our social media links and our copyright text. This web page is also responsive. So if I go into responsive mode, let me turn that on and begin to resize the web page. You will see that this page is fully responsive. If you enjoy these kind of contents, please go ahead and leave a like and also share with other persons that you may think would appreciate this content as well. And if you have any feedback, please leave them in the comment section, as I'll be looking forward to hearing from you guys. Now, let's begin working on our web page. As usual, we start by creating an empty folder within our workspace. I call mine Tough Fitness Gym. Then within this folder, we'll create a couple of other folders. So we'll create a folder for our assets. Within our assets folder, we'll create another folder for images and one for video. Then outside of that folder, we'll create another folder called CSS. And within this folder, we'll create our CSS file. That's main.css. Then we also create our index file. So that's index.html. Before we begin to write out our HTML, I'll just copy the assets that we're going to be using for this project into our workspace. Now we can start working on our HTML. So we'll start by writing HTML 5. For the title, we'll use Tough Fitness Gym. Also create a link to our CSS. So that's within our CSS folder, main.css. And then we can start work on the body of our HTML document. Let's create our header element. Then create a div with a class called navIcon. Then we'll create 2 spans. The class of line. Then we'll add another class to them called line1 for the first one and line2 for the second one. Underneath the div with the class of navIcon, we'll now create our nav. We'll give it a class of nav as well. And then we'll create another div inside of it called navList. Within our navList, we'll create some anchor tags with a class of navlink. Give it hashtag for the href. And then the first one will be home. We'll copy it down 4 times. And then the second one will be events, coaching, trainers, contact. Underneath our nav, we'll create a section element with a class called hero. And then within this section element, we'll be adding our background video, as well as our headline text and our call to action button. For the background video, we'll just create a div with a class called bg-video. Then we'll create our video element with a class called bg video content. We'll set it to autoplay, muted, and we also want it to loop. Next, we'll add the source for our video. So we'll open a source element with src, and the video will be in our assets folder, in our videos folder, and it's bg-video-mp4. Sorry. Then the type of our source will be video/mp4. Also bear in mind that not all browsers may support the video format that you're using, so you may have to add multiple video sources within your video element. So you may have a next video source here that may be an AVI or a WebM, which you'd have to have WebM here as well. And then you'd have to have this video format within your assets as well. But for this tutorial, we are only using MP4. You can also add a fallback text to tell the user that their browser doesn't support the video format that you have added. Just in case if their browser doesn't support this video format, then they'll see this text. Now, underneath our div with the class of bg-video, we create another div with a class of logo. And within this div, we'll add a image element with the source of our logo. For the alt attribute, we'll give it tough fitness logo. Then underneath our logo div, we'll create a h1, and then we'll write more than fitness. And then underneath that, we'll create a h2 that says build your tomorrow today. The last element that we're going to be creating for this section is our button. So that's button with a class called btn and btn-primary. That says start now. Let's take a look at what we have so far. So this is how our HTML is looking so far. We have our navigation here, we have our background video, we have our logo, and we have our headlines, as well as our call to action button. Let's work on the CSS for this section before moving on to the rest of the HTML. So go to our CSS file. I'll paste my Google font in. I'm using 2 fonts. I'm using Knit or Knit and Poppins. I will also go ahead and list out the variables that I'll be using for my colors. So within our root, so we'll have a color primary, hashtag FEC F3B. We'll have our color primary dark, That's hashtag AD8E29. Next, we'll have our color primary light. That's hashtag FFDE70. Then we'll have our secondary. That's hashtag 400183. Then we'll have our color dark gray. And that's hashtag 333. Then we'll have our color light gray, which will be C8C8C8. Next, we'll have our color light. This will be like our white color. But if we decide to use a different light color or a different shade, then we can just adjust the variable. And the last one we'll have is color dark. And for this, we'll use 0F, 0F, 0F. Next, we'll reset our browser defaults. So set the margin to 0, padding to 0, box sizing to border box. Next, we'll set the font size of our HTML document. So that's HTML. And the font size should be 62.5%. And this will ensure that 1 rem equals 10 pixels. We also need to set up the body. So we'll set body. We'll set the font family for our body to Poppins. The fallback will be sans serif. We will also set the background color for our body. That's background color. And this will be our variable dark gray. The first element that we're going to be working on in our header section will be our navigation. Let's start on that. So target the nav class. We'll give it a position of fixed. We'll give it a width of 50 rem. 50 rems. Give it a top 0. Bottom 0. Left 0. Background color. And we use our variable light for this one, which is currently our white color. So this is how our navigation is looking so far. Next, we need to align our navigational links to flow vertically instead of horizontally. To do so, we'll target our nav list. So that's a class of nav list. We'll give it a display of flex and then set the flex direction to column. So there it is flowing vertically. Let's now continue to style it. So we'll give it a font size of 2.5 rem. We'll set the width and height to 100%. So that's width 100%. The height to 100%. We also need to center it and push it away from the top a little bit. So that will be align items center. Now let's push it down a little bit by using our top margin and give it a top margin of 15 rem just to give it some space from the top. Let's now style the links themselves. We'll do that by targeting nav list, nav link. We'll remove the text decoration, so we'll set text decoration to none. We'll give them a margin bottom, 2 rem. We'll give them a font weight of 300. We'll give them a color use our variable, and this will be our dark gray. There we go. Next, we'll work on the hover state for our nav links. We can just copy this, paste it underneath here, and select our hover state. And when it hovers, we're going to change the color, and we're going to use our variable, and the hover will be our secondary color. We'll increase the weight to 500, and we'll also scale it. So we'll do transform, scale, and 1.1. So as you can see, when we hover, it increases the size, it's bold, and it also scales up. Let's make this hover effect a little bit more smoother by adding transitions. So we'll go back here and we'll add a transition. And we'll say transition all 0.3 seconds. Now the hover effect is a lot smoother. Let's now work on our nav icon. Underneath our nav list, we'll just target our nav icon. So target the class nav icon. We'll give it a fixed position. We'll set the top to 5 rem and the left to 5 rem. We'll give it a width 5 rems and a height 5 rems as well. Also give it a background color. We'll just use, let's just use red for now, just so we can see it. It's not showing here because it's likely behind this navigational menu, so we need to increase the Z index for our nav icon. Let's go ahead and increase the Z index. So we'll give it a Z index of 100. And there we go. Here is our nav icon. So let's give the navigation icon the intended background color, which will be our color light. We will give it a box shadow of 0.1 rem on the X, 0.1 rem on the Y, 1 rem for the blur. Then we'll give it a RGBA of 0, 0, 0, which is black, with an opacity of 0.2. So this is what we have. Next, we'll turn it into a circle by giving it a border radius of 50%. So that is border radius 50%. Now it's a complete circle. We will now work on creating the lines within the navigational icon. To do so, we'll target our nav icon and then with the class of line. Give it a width of 2 rem, height of 0.3 rem, background color. And we use our secondary color, so that's var secondary, and a display of block. Now let's look at that. So here we have the icons. It looks like one, but it's really 2 icons. We just need to give them some space between each other. So let's continue to center the icons and then give them the space between each other. So first we'll center them by targeting the parent container and giving it a display of flex. So that's display flex. We want the flex direction to be column. So that's flex direction column. And we want to justify content center and align item center. The line is now centered. Next, we'll give the first line a margin bottom to separate it from the second one. To set the margin bottom on the first line, we will use the nth child pseudo class. So that's nav icon, line, and then nth child. We'll target the first one. I will give it a margin bottom of 0.5 rem. There we go. We will rotate both lines by 5 degrees. So give it a slight rotation, and then on hover, we will set the rotation back to 0. So we'll copy this. We will say when the nav icon is hovered, so that's hover, we want to set the rotation of the lines back to 0 degree. There we go. What we want to work on next is the functionality of our navigation menu. The traditional way that persons use to accomplish this is usually with the use of JavaScript, but we can accomplish this using CSS with the assistance of a checkbox. So first, we'll need to include a checkbox. So that would be input with a type of checkbox. We'll remove the name. We will give it a ID called toggle nav or nav toggle, whichever. I'll go nav toggle. Then this div with the class of nav icon, we will change it to a label because we are going to use this label to control this checkbox. So change it to a label and set the for attribute to nav toggle. If we go back to our page, we're not seeing the checkbox. That is because it's behind the navigational menu. So let's hide this navigational menu by default. So we'll go back to our CSS and locate our nav. So that's the class nav. And then we'll set the left position to -50 rem. So now the navigational menu is hidden and we're seeing our checkbox here. If we click on our nav icon, we will see that it checks the checkbox and uncheck it. We can use this functionality along with CSS to hide and show the navigational menu. Let's select our checkbox with the ID of nav toggle. And we're going to say when this is checked, we then want our nav to have a left position of 0. And that will bring our navigational menu back on screen. So when the checkbox is checked, the navigation will come back on screen. And then if we click this nav icon again, it comes off screen. Let's work on the transition so it has a smoother transition. So we'll locate the nav class, and give it a transition on the left property, 0.3 seconds. So you see, it has a smoother transition. So with just CSS and HTML, we can achieve this functionality. The last thing we want to do with this navigational icon is to convert it to a X when the menu is showing. So scroll all the way down the bottom, then we'll select the nav toggle and say when it is checked, we want to select the nav icon. So that's the class nav icon. And further select the line 1. We want to give this a rotation, so we go rotate 405 degrees. And for line 2, so we'll copy this down and select line 2 and give it a -405 degrees rotation. So as you can see, we're forming the X. We just need to translate it a bit to align it. So let's give it some translation. So for the first one, we'll go transform, translate. We will translate it 0.4 rem on the x-axis and 0.3 rems on the y-axis. For line 2, we'll give it a translation as well. So that's transform, translate. I will translate it 0.3 rem on the x-axis and -0.1 rem on the y-axis. There we go. We can also increase the width just a little bit on both lines. So let's copy this, paste it above, and target both lines by using the line class and increase the width from 2 rems to 2.5 rems. Let's also add a transition to this so the animation can be a bit smoother. So scroll up here where we selected the line in its normal state and give it a transition of all 0.3 seconds. And lastly, we'll hide this checkbox. So scroll down, select our nav toggle, and give it a property of display none. Now it's hidden and we still have the functionality. So let's finish styling the rest of our header section by aligning the logo and the headlines and styling our call to action button. We're going to style this entire section now, which is our hero section. We'll just add some comments. So we'll say hero, end of hero. Now we'll select this class here that says hero. So we'll hero, give it a width of 100%, a height of 100 viewport height, give it a display of flex. I want to set the flex direction to column, justify content center, and align item center. We also want to give it a padding all the way around of 3 rems. As you can see, we have the logo, the headlines, and the call to action button aligned to the center and the video playing above. We now need to place the video into the background. Let's select the video container. So that's a div with the class of bg-video. Give it a width of 100%. We'll set its position to absolute. Give it a top of 0, left of 0. Next, we'll set the properties for the video element itself. So we'll say background video and target the video. We'll give it a width of 100%, a height of 100%. Let's give this background here a height of 100 viewport height. I will set this object fit to cover. As you can see, the video is taking up 100% of our viewport height, but it is hiding the rest of our content. So we need to send it backward. We'll do so by setting the Z index of our video container to a negative number. Let's use negative 100. Now we can see the rest of our content for our hero section. We will also give this video an overlay and animate the color of this overlay. We go over back to our HTML section, and just above the video, we'll create a div with a class of bg-video-overlay. And then we'll go back into CSS and create the style for this div. So we'll target it, bg video overlay. Give it a position of absolute. Give it a width of 100%, a height of 100 viewport height, a top of 0, left 0. We want it to be on top of the video, so we'll give it a Z index of -50. We will give it a temporary background color. So that's background color Let's use this one. It will be temporary. We'll change it in our keyframes. And then we'll set the opacity to 0.3. And we'll change the blend mode to overlay. So that's mixed blend mode, overlay. So as you can see, we have this overlay over our video. Now it's time to animate the background color of our video overlay with the use of keyframes. So we'll say at keyframe, we'll call it video overlay. And what we're going to do is to animate the background color. So at 0%, we want the background color to be hashtag DC143C. 25%. We want to change the background color to hashtag 8A2BE2. Then we'll just copy these down, set the third one to 50%, and the last one to 75%. Copy the name of the keyframe, and then we'll give the background overlay that animation property. So we'll go animation, give it the name of the animation. We want it to run for 2 seconds, linear, infinite. And as you can see, we're getting this cool effect in the background. Let's now move on to styling the rest of our hero section. Select the H1 in our hero section. So that's hero H1. Let's give it a font size of 10 rems. A color, we'll give it a color light. Give it a line height of 1. And we will also give it a text shadow. So that's 0 on the X, 0.3 rem, 0.3 rem, and then an RGBA off black with 20% opacity. There we go. Next, we'll target our H2. So that's hero, H2. Set the font size to 3 rems. The color, we'll use our primary color. The font weight will be 400. And we'll also give it a text shadow. We could just copy the text shadow from the H1 above. There we go. We also want to change the font of this H1. All of our H1 will use the same font, so we'll just go up top and just set the H1 font. We'll select our H1 and give it a font family, and we'll set it to Canet or Canet, not sure the pronunciation, and the fallback will be sans serif. There we go. Next, we'll style our call to action button and our logo. So scroll all the way down. Let's select our logo. So we'll go just above the H1 style, and then we'll go hero, logo. I want to give it a position of absolute. I want to set the top to 3 rems. Next, we want to select the image within the logo container. So that's hero, logo. Then we want to select the image element. We want to give it a width of 30 rem. Our logo is now moved to the top. Next, we'll give it a drop shadow to separate it from the background a little bit. For that, we'll use a filter property and select drop shadow. I will give it a 0 on the X, 0 on the Y, and a 1 rem blur. I will use RGBA of black. So that's 0, 0, 0. And then an opacity of 90%. So that's 0.9. As you can see, we have a little drop shadow behind it, just to give it a contrast and separate it from the background video. Let's now work on our button. For our button, let's style using the BTN class. So that will be BTN class. We'll give it a width of 40 rem, height of 6 rem, font size of 2.5 rem. We'll use our secondary color. For our color, we'll set the text to uppercase. So that's text transform, uppercase. We'll remove the outline. So that's outline none, border none. Letter spacing to 0.3 rems. Give it a top margin of 5 rem. A font weight of 600. I will also change the cursor to pointer. There we go. Next, we'll select the button dash primary class. Use this to change the background color of our button. So we'll set the background color to our primary color. Nice. We will also work on the hover effect of our button. So we'll select the primary button class and say on hover, we want the background color to be our color light. We want to transform, scale 1.1, and also give it a translation in the Y direction of minus 0.9 rem. That will move the button up, as you can see. Just to smooth out the animation, we'll also set a transition on the button primary class of all to 0.3 seconds. There we go. Lastly, we'll add a box shadow to the button when it is being hovered. So we'll go box shadow. We'll go 0 on the X, 1 rem on the Y, 2 rem for the blur, and then we'll give it a RGBA of black with 30% opacity or 0.3. There we go. And this is it. This is our hero section. We can now move on to our training path section. So underneath header, we'll create a section with a class of training path. The first element we'll have is a H1 with a class of training path heading. And then we write path to greatness. Let's just close this and work over here so we can see it a little better. Underneath our H1, we'll create a div with a class called card wrapper. Then we'll create another div with a class called card. Within the card div, we'll create a div with a class called card title. And then we'll create a H3, and the first one we'll call it isolation training. Underneath our card title, we'll add a image, so that's img. And the source will be in our assets folder, images. And the first image is man with dumbbells. For the alt tag, we can write man with dumbbells. Underneath our image, we'll create a div with a class of card body. We'll also create a paragraph tag within this div with a class of card description. We'll just put some placeholder text, so we'll use lorem ipsum. So let's go lorem 20. Then underneath the paragraph, we'll create an anchor tag with a class of card button. So that's card-btn. Put hashtag for the href. And then the content of the button, or the text of the button, will be learn more. Let's see what we have so far. So as you can see, we have our section heading, our card title. This is our card image. We have the paragraph for the card here. That will be our card description. And we have the call to action button here, which is an anchor tag. We are going to have 4 of these cards. So let's duplicate the card and modify the contents. So we'll select our card div and duplicate it 3 more times. So that's 1, 2, 3. So scroll up. This is the first one. The second one is going to be strength training. The image is man bench pressing. We can leave everything else the same. The third one, the title will be high intensity cardio. And we'll change the image for that to woman-cardio-jpg. And the last one, the title will be ultimate dance class. And we'll change the image for that to man dancing. So these are our images for our cards, and we have 4 cards that we need to style. Let's now go ahead and style them. So go back to our CSS, split this right. Scroll all the way down. Shrink it. So first, we target our training path class. Give it a width of 100% and a padding on the top of 5 rem and 0 on the left and the right. Next, we'll style our training path heading. So that's training path heading. We'll give it a font size of 5 rem, font weight of 600, color, use our color light. We'll align the text to center, so that's text align center. Text transform to uppercase. Now our letter spacing will be 0.2 rem. There we go. Next, we'll move on to working on our cards. So let's first target the card wrapper, which is this here that holds all the cards. So it'll be training path, card wrapper. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it padding 5 rem all the way around. Set the display to flex. There we go. That way we have all of them being beside each other. Next, We'll target the card class. Each card will have a width of 50 rem, a margin right of 2 rem, a height of 65 rem, and a box shadow of 0 on the X, 0 on the right, 3 rem for the blur, and an RGBA of black with 50% opacity, so that's 0.5. Next, we'll go ahead and style our card title. So let's select it here, card title. We'll give it a font size, 2 rems, letter spacing of 0.2 rem. We'll change the color to our primary color. We'll set the position to absolute. And because we're setting this position to absolute, we need to set the parent, which is a card, to relative, so that it is positioned based on the card and not the body. We'll give it a top of 3 rems. We'll give it a left of 0, a right of 0. We'll align the text to center. So that's text align center. And let's see what we have so far. So here we go. This is our card title. We also need to give it a text shadow just to improve the contrast between the text and the background. So we'll go text shadow. We give it 0 on the X, 0.3 rems. We'll give it 1 rem for the blur, and then RGBA of black. So that's 0, 0, 0. Let's use RGB. We are not going to use any opacity. So we instead of RGBA, we'll just use RGB. Let's see how that looks. So as you can see, we have a shadow behind the text, which improves the contrast between the text and the background image. Let's work on sizing these images real quick. Let's give the images a class. So that will be class. We'll call it card img. We'll just go ahead and copy this class down to the others. Then we can target this class, which is our card image. So that's card-img. Give it a width of 100%, a height of 100%, give it a object fit of cover, and we'll also set the position to absolute. There we go. So because we have set the image position to absolute, it is now on top of our text. So we'll bring our text forward by using Z indexes. So we'll go back to our CSS, and for the title, we'll give it a Z index of, let's go 50. So the title is now showing again. Next, we'll reduce the opacity of our image. So we'll go back to card image, set the opacity to 50% or 0.5. So that reduces the contrast of the image. And then on hover, we'll give it a opacity of 1 again. So when the card is hovered, so that's card, hover, we want to set the card image to 100% opacity. So opacity 1 gives it this effect. Nice. Let's now work on styling the card body. So the card body has this div, has this paragraph text, which is our card description, and it also has the card button. So let's begin by styling the card body. So select the card body. We'll give it a width of 100%, a height of 70%, give it a background color of RGBA, and that will be 29 for the red, 28 for the green, and the blue will be 28 with a opacity of 0.9. We give it a position of absolute. So this is our card body, so we need to bring it down. So set the bottom to 0, set the left to 0, and let's see what we have. Nice. We're now going to change the shape of our body div using clip path. So I already have my clip path copied in my clipboard, so I'll just paste it. For clip path, I usually use a clip path generator online to generate my clip path. So this is the shape that we get for our clip path. We now need to align the content within our body section. We'll set the display to flex. Set the flex direction to column. We'll justify content center. We also want to align the items center. There we go. We'll also set a padding all the way around of 5 rems. There we go. Let's now add some styles to our description. So that will be our card description. So we'll just copy this class and select it in our CSS. We'll give it a font size of 1.4 rem. We'll give it a color, and this will be our light gray color. I will give it a margin bottom 2 rems. There we go. We'll now style our button. So that will be our card button here. So we'll copy that and select it in our CSS. I will give it a font size of 1.8 rem. We'll set the text to uppercase, so that's text transform, uppercase. Remove the text decoration none. Text align center. Give it some letter spacing. So we'll go 0.2 rem. We'll set the color to our primary color. Let's see what we have so far. We'll give it a border of 0.1 rem. Solid. I'll also use our primary color for the border. Here we go. We'll give it some padding. 1.2 rem all the way around. Nice. Next, we'll work on the hover state for our button. So select our card button. And when it is hovered, we want to change some stuff. So we'll set the font weight to bold. We'll change the background color to our primary color. We'll change our text color to our dark color. So that's color dark. And we also want to scale the button as well. So let's transform scale 1.1. Let's see. There we go. Let's smooth out the animation by adding a transition. So go back to our button class and add a transition of all 0.3 seconds. There we go. Looking good so far. By default, we don't want the body of the card to be shown until the card is actually hovered. So we'll locate the card body, which is this, and we'll set the bottom to minus 70%. That way it will not be seen. We also need to set the overflow of our card to hidden, so the body is not seen down here. So locate our card selector and set the overflow to hidden. There we go. Now, when the card is hovered, we want that section to come on screen. So locate our body, and then we say on the card, so we'll go card, so we'll select the card, and say when it is hovered, we want the body to have a bottom of 0. There we go. Next, we'll add some transition property to smooth out the animation. So within our body, we'll go transition all 0.3 seconds. There we go. Nice. And that is it for this section. We can now move on to the next one. Our next section will be our gym tour section. So let's work on the HTML for that. So underneath our last section tag, we'll create a new section with a class called gym tour. It will have a left div and a right div. The left div will consist only of an image. And the image will be in our assets folder, images, and will be our dumbbell image. For the alt tag, we'll call it dumbbell. Remove this. And then in the right side, we'll have a H3 that says take a look around. And a paragraph. We'll just use lorem ipsum for this. So we'll go lorem 25 for our paragraph. Finally, we'll create a anchor tag with a text that says go inside. And we also want to add a font awesome icon to the button. So let's get a link to our font awesome. We'll use a CDN. So we'll go font awesome CDN. And we'll use this link, cdnjs.com. And we'll copy the link tag. We'll go to the head section of our HTML and paste the font awesome link. And while we're here, we can also insert our fave icon. So the link, fave icon. And our icon is in our assets folder. images, fave icon. Now we can add our font awesome icon to our button. So that will be the I tag with a class of FA solid and another class of FA arrow right. Let's see what we have so far. So we can close this. So you're seeing our fave icon here. So this is our gym tour section. Here we have the image that will be on the left, and we have the contents that will be on the right. Let's now go ahead and work on the CSS for this. So go back to our CSS. We can split this right. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. We'll create a section for gym tour. So we'll start off by targeting this section with the class of gym tour. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll target the left side. So we'll go gym tour and then target the class left and give it a width of 50% because we just want it to take up half of the section. Then we'll target the right side. So that's gym tour. And then we'll target the right class. We'll give it also a width of 50%. To make the left and the right side be beside each other, we'll go back to the gym tour section and give it a display of flex. And we also need to scale the image. So let's select the gym tour left selector and further select the image tag. Give the image a width of 100%, a height of 100%. We'll set the object fit to cover. And there we go. So we have the left side and the right side, both being 50% each. Let's now continue styling our right side. So we want the right side to have a display of flex direction column. I want to align the item center, justify content center, give it a background color. That will be our color light. Give it a padding, 3 rems all the way around. Next, we'll work on styling the H3 tag. So we'll copy this selector and then add the H3 to it. We'll give it a font size, 6 rems. We'll set the text to uppercase, so that's text transform. Uppercase. I will give it a margin bottom of 5 rem. Nice. Let's now style this paragraph. So we'll copy this portion of the selector and add our P tag. We'll set the font size. Let me scroll up. Set the font size to 2 rem. Set the color to our dark gray. So that's our dark gray variable. Give it a width of 70%. Give it a margin bottom 5 rem. Next, we'll style our button. So copy this again. target our anchor tag. We'll set the text decoration to none. Font size to 1.8 rems. Background color to our dark gray. The text color to white. So that's our color light. Padding to rem. Text transform uppercase. There we go. Let's now work on the hover state for our button. So we'll select this, add a hover pseudo class to it. And when this is hovered, we want to change the background color to our color dark. We also want to scale it. That's transform scale 1.1. So this is the effect. We also want, whenever we hover over the button, the arrow pushes to the right. So we'll copy this and target the I tag and give it a margin left of 2 rem. So whenever we hover, the arrow pushes to the right. Let's smooth that out with some transitions. So we'll add a transition here to our anchor tag. So that's transition all 0.3 seconds. There we go. We can also smooth out the transition for the icon. Nice. The last thing we're going to do for this section is just to give the entire section a margin bottom. So scroll all the way up to our gym tour selector and give it a margin bottom of 4 rem. And that's it. So we're now complete with this section. We will now move on to our final section, which is our footer. So underneath our last section, we'll open a footer element. And then we'll create a div with a class of social icons. And within this div, we'll have 3 social media icons that we'll get from Font Awesome. So we'll create a I tag with a class of FA-brands and another class of FA-YouTube. That's our first icon. We'll copy it down 2 more times. I will change the second one to Instagram. I will change the last one to Facebook. Then underneath our social icons, we'll create another div with a class called copyright. And within that div, we'll have a paragraph. And within the paragraph, we'll have the text copyright. The copyright symbol. 2022. All rights reserved. And that's it for HTML. Let's now work on the CSS. So underneath our gym tour, we'll create footer. and footer. So let's target our footer element. So we'll select that, give it a width of 100%, a minimum height of 10 rem, background color of our color dark, set the display to flex, justify content center, align item center, give it a padding of 3 rem, and set the color to our primary color. There we go. We also need to change the flex direction to column so that the copyright can be underneath the social media icons. So here we need to say flex direction column, and there we go. Next, we'll move on to our social media icons. So that will be footer, the social icons. I'll give it a font size of 3 rems. This should be social icons. There we go. Let's now style each of our icons individually to give them their individual styles. So that will be footer, social icons, and the I tag. What we want to do is to give them some padding. So we'll go padding 1 rem. We'll give them a right margin, so that's margin right, 2 rems. We can also give them a bottom margin just to separate them from the copyright text. So we'll go margin bottom 2 rem. See what that looks like. Nice. I'm also just realizing that these should have been anchor tags. So let's wrap them into our anchor tag. We'll create an anchor tag with a href of hashtag, and then we'll wrap each icon in their own individual anchor tag. All right. So we'll select our anchor tag here. And give it a color. We'll just use our primary light. There we go. We can now work on the hover state for our icons. So we'll select this selector here for our icons. And when it's hovered, we want to change the color to, let's change it back to our primary color. There we go. We can also scale it. So we'll transform scale 1.1 and set the transition to all 0.3 seconds. This should be transition. Nice. Last thing we're going to style is our copyright section. So that will be footer, copyright. I want to give it a font size of 1.8 rem and a font weight of 300. And that's it. Now let's take a look at the entire page. So here we have our hero section, we have our navigation with our hover, we have our path to greatness section, our gym tour section, and our footer. The last thing we'll need to do to make this web page complete would be to add our media queries. To see how it looks on other screen sizes, we can go to Inspect and turn on our responsive view. And this allows us to see the website on different screen sizes. The resolution I used to design this page was 1920 by 1080, and as you can see, everything is already perfectly aligned for this resolution. We can now move down to our laptop with high definition and see how it looks. So for the most part, it still looks good on our laptop with high definition, with only this section needed a little fixing. So let's go ahead and start to write our media query. So create a section for media queries. And our first breakpoint will be of a max width of 1440 pixels. So we'll go at media, max width 1440 pixels. We will now change one rem to equal to 9 pixels instead of 10. So we'll go HTML and set the font size to 56.25%. To derive these calculations, you basically divide whatever you want one rem to be equal to by 16, then times it by 100. So in our case, we wanted one rem to equal to 9 pixels. So we divide 9 by 16 and multiply it by 100, and then you will get 56.25%. So this section is good now, and the entire web page still looks great. Alright, so we'll go down to our next breakpoint, which is our laptop with medium DPI. Overall, it's still looking good. What we could probably do is break these cards into 2 rows. So we have 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and then we'll need to reduce the font size of this again. And then that will be it for this breakpoint. So let's work on that. So we'll target that breakpoint. So we'll go at media, max width of 1280 pixels. We'll work on the training path section first. So that's training path. I'll select the card wrapper. And to break it into multiple rows, we'll do flex wrap and set it to wrap. We also want to center the cards. So we'll go justify content, center, and give them some margin bottom. So that's card. We'll give it a margin bottom 2 rem. There we go. Next we'll fix this. So that will be our gym tour H3. We want to reduce the font size. So that's font size, set it to 4 rem. I want to align the text center and give it a margin bottom 1 rem. Didn't change much. Oh, we needed to select the right side as well based on the specificity. There we go. Let's also increase the width of our paragraph. So that's paragraph. And the width is currently 70%, so we'll set it to 90. Nice. I think this is good for this breakpoint. We can now move on to our next breakpoint, which will be our tablets. So let's select a tablet from the list. We'll select this one, which is our iPad. So this is our tablet view. This is okay. What we can do is we can reduce the height of our background video. These font size want to be a little bit smaller. We can have 2 cards per row on the tablet as well. And the tablet won't have a hover state because we are using touch. So we'll show the body of the card by default. And we can reduce the font size here as well. Alright, so let's work on that. So our media query for our tablet would have a max width of 900 pixels. And then we'll target our HTML, give it a font size of 37.5%. Next, we'll reduce the height of our hero section to 50% viewport height, or 50 viewport height. We'll target our logo, so that's hero, logo. I will set the top to 0. Then we also want to target the logo image itself, so that's hero, logo, the target img, and we want to give it a width of 25 rem. We also need to reduce the height of the background video, so we'll go background video, set the height to 50 rem. 50 viewport height, sorry. Let's see what's happening. Alright, so we also need to reduce the overlay of the video. As you can see, it is still 100 viewport height. So let's reduce that. So that will be the BG video overlay. Give it a height of 50 viewport height. There we go. Also, as you can see, by reducing the overall font size of the HTML document by setting it to 37.5%, the cards are resized as well because we are using rem for the units of measurements. So that's the advantage when we are using rem instead of pixels. We can now move on to styling these cards some more. So for the card, we'll give it a width of 48%. We'll set the card title. Give it a font size of 2.5 rem. Target the card image. So that's card image. I will set the opacity to 1 by default because we won't have a hover state on the tablets. And the body, we need to show it by default as well. So that's body, card body. We'll set the bottom to 0. We'll unset the clip path. We'll give it a height of 45%. So we're reducing it from 70% to 45%. And give it a padding also of 3 rems. Let's see what we have. Nice. We also need to increase the font size on our description and the size of our button. So for our description, that's card description. I want to give it a font size 2 rem. For our card button, I inspected the element and I'm realizing that the font size property wasn't set properly. So I have font instead of font size. So let's change that, and that should fix the size of our button without the need for media query. So go back to our CSS, scroll all the way back up to the top and find where we have font here and change it to font size. And then if we go back to our web page, we can see where it's now good. So that's our card. I think this section looks okay. Let's scroll back up just to make sure we covered everything. Oh, we need to fix this as well so we can increase the Z index for our navigation menu. Let's go back to here. Let's scroll all the way up to the top and find our navigation and give it a Z index. So give it a Z index of 1000 because we want it to be in front of everything except for the nav icon. So let's locate our nav icon and set this to 1001. There we go. And that's it for our tablet breakpoint. We can now move down to our cell phones. So I'll just select a cell phone from the list. So as you can see, we have a number of work to do. We need to fix here, so we'll work on that. We need to fix this card section here. We need to fix this gym tour section. And the footer is okay. Alright. For our phone breakpoint, we'll go at media and select a max width of 600 pixels. Then we'll first target the H1 within our hero section. So that's hero H1. We'll set the font size to 6 rems. And we align the text to center. And that looks like it. What we'll do next is fix our cards here. Let's select our card. So that's card. And give it a width of 90%. Nice. And I think that is good enough for our cards. We just now need to fix this area, and that's it for our mobile view. So we'll select our gym tour section. So that's gym tour. And change the flex direction to column. There we go. We're also going to give it a height of 100 rem. Then we'll select the left side. So that's gym tour left. This contains our image. I will give it a width of 100% and a height of 50%. And also the right side. So that's gym tour right. We'll give it a width of 100% and a height of 50%. This should be percent. There we have it. And then the last thing we're going to do is to flip the image and this content around. So we want this content to appear before the image in our mobile phones. So do that by giving this a order of 1. And there we go. So that is it.